Basketball fans, welcome into Raptors Today. Akil Augustine joined by Sherm Hamilton and the principal, Paul Jones, after the Toronto Raptors winning streak coming to an end against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Final score 118-93. Not the best second half from the Toronto Raptors. Now sit at 30-32 as they fight for a possible play-in spot, or hopefully, as Raptors fans collectively hold their breath, hold on to a sixth seed if they can, shore out the end of the season. Let's talk about it, though. Let's talk about the end, or let's talk about the entire game. Let's talk about this game in its entirety. No Fred VanVleet in the building. The Toronto Raptors, okay, first half. The third quarter kind of became the story, but give me your takeaways from this game. Jonesy, we'll start with you as an overall retrospective on what the Raptors have been able to do.
I think it was kind of a classic back-to-back loss. And a lot of people will say, well, wait a minute. It's not your classic back-to-back scenario, because it's not, a game at 7 and then a game at 7:30 the next night. One game was at noon, and then the next game was at 6 p.m. There should have been time. I just think your body clock is off from that noon game. And it is a back-to-back scenario. And we saw kind of classic back-to-back loss, how a classic back-to-back loss happens. You're good in the first half, or you're okay. You come out in the third quarter, you make a push because the energy is needed, you're down, and in the middle of the third quarter, things just fell apart. I thought a lot of that was due to Donovan Mitchell, too, and the way he played. But listen, the Raptors have had, that was 7 out of 8, 7 out of 9 now. It could have easily been a 7-8 game winning streak if you think about, 5-6 minutes against Utah. Take that away or make that a win, and you've got it's a long winning streak. So I thought they did a good job. Yesterday got them. And then don't disregard the fact that Cleveland had lost to Toronto 3 times on the season. And I was joking about it on Raptors Tonight with Sherman and Jack and Randy. Somebody tapped Donovan Mitchell on the shoulder and said, I know you got 70, but these guys have held you to an average of under 20 in 3 games. Your team's performance is down 10 points per game against these guys. So there's a little get back there from Cleveland in my eyes as well.
And it's hard to beat a team 4 times in a season, too. I will say this. That third quarter, I thought the Raptors came out, banged off 5 quick points. J.B. Bickerstaff burned that timeout, and it's like two minutes into the quarter and said, enough of that. Yeah. We're done with that. That timeout came in, as you mentioned, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland just took things over and got the game into a position where they could run the table. But it was one of those situations. You could see that the Raptors just didn't have it, whether it was the gas tank was empty, the rhythm was done. Not having Fred VanVleet on the floor was big. I thought Cleveland employed that. We're going to pressure the ball handler, especially when they don't have a close-to-point guard on the floor. We're going to make it difficult. And they executed. But, Donovan Mitchell was really, really good, especially in the first half. He was really good to start the game. And again, this Cleveland team is interesting because Jared Allen is such an X factor. When he's playing well, this team becomes very different because of his lob threat, because of his rim protection, because of his dump-off ability and positioning around the basket. And when you have guys like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland who can get into the paint and they can create all kinds of havoc, it becomes very difficult to contend with all of that. And then defensively, I thought the Raptors really struggled as the offensive team to get anything consistently against that front line of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that becomes, one of those things where if you don't get that rhythm going without a backcourt player like Fred VanVleet to set everything up, it becomes difficult to be consistent. So credit to Cleveland Cavaliers, but the Raptors did have some of that back-to-back energy on them.
I counted 13 or 14 missed layups, like right in the lane. How much did that do to Jared Allen?
Yeah, and we saw this with Walker Kessler as well. The shot's not as timed. It's quicker.
You're
it's
looking.
just a little bit higher.
You're
it's
aware
just the
of where
touch
he
is
is.
different.
You're looking. And then I look at a guy like Gary Trent Jr., who had some good looks and couldn't get them down. All it takes is a couple of those to go down. His attitude is different. The team's attitude is different. So, but to Sherm's point, give Cleveland credit.
Now, you stressed the performance of Donovan Mitchell. It's normally OG Anunoby who, draws him and really contests and gives him a hard time. How much credit do you give OG not being in his full form now coming off of that wrist injury?
Part of that, OG, but some of the stuff that Donovan Mitchell was doing, you're not going to stop. Like pull-up threes in transition. the floor is broken, you're running back, you're trying to identify, okay, stop the ball, who's here, who's there. All he needs is a crack, and he's going to pull up and make a three in transition. Or while you're scrambling to set the floor and identify and match up, he goes by people. So, Donovan Mitchell's a heck of a player. He's one of those guys that you're not going to stop. The fact that the Raptors had held him to an average of 17 points a game in 3 games, the guy's scoring 27 a game. So you're doing something when you do that. And, as Sherm said 4 times, you can't do that for the entire season. Donovan Mitchell's not going to have 7 points in a game. It's rare that you're going to see that. And so, to me, I just think he came out with a little extra juice knowing the record and what Toronto had done to him.
Sherm, were you surprised that Coach Nurse kept the starters or brought the starters back in that fourth quarter, seeing how the game was kind of playing out, especially knowing the minutes concerns with this group?
Yeah, I saw that, and I kind of just chalked that up to just continuing to give Jakob Poeltl run on the floor, with Pascal, with OG, with guys he's going to play a lot of minutes with, even though the game was seemingly out of reach at that point. And in the NBA, you never know what can happen.
Lakers got a 27-point comeback.
100%. So you never know what can happen, but part of that I feel was, and I don't know this from Nick Nurse's perspective, but I just feel like getting Jakob the runs and running some plays and the routine and the rhythm with those guys, I thought that was some time to give back to
working
him.
practice, right?
Yeah.
All right, now a big concern for the Toronto Raptors was shot creation. Without Fred VanVleet, a lot of the pressure put on Pascal Siakam. You talked about Gary Trent's struggles. How big will the return of Father Freddie, who welcomed his 3rd child into the world this weekend, be for this group as they kind of look to build that momentum offensively? Sherm, I'll start with you.
When Freddie Jr. came into the world, Fred VanVleet made a statement for the Raptors in the playoffs.
Fans are excited for Father
100%.
Freddie.
So we know what that does for Fred in the past. First of all, happy for him. Congratulations to Fred. It's another amazing point in his life and his family's life. But the understanding of what Fred brings to the floor was evident in that game against Cleveland. His ability to set the table, to be a constant threat that Cleveland has to pay attention to, and then to make timely plays and or shots. All of those elements worked into a game against Cleveland changes the whole game plan defensively. You're not going to pressure Fred full court. He knows how to handle that. He's going to break that down. He's going to find something. And then offensively, okay, Gary doesn't have it going. OG, Pascal, who can get something? Fred can go get something. And
He relishes the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think when you have that complete package that Fred brings to the floor, it becomes a whole different energy, and guys can play off of him instead of having to be the guy in specific moments. So, and defensively, too, your point of attack is different with Fred on the floor as well. So he impacts it on every level.
You just got to figure you're getting your leader back. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And to the point in the offense, there's nothing like a high screen and roll with Fred and Jakob. People, again, I've said this a few times, people look at the chemistry between Jakob and Pascal, and we saw it in the Detroit game. We saw it at least 2 or 3 times yesterday, kind of a high post split where there's only one guy. I mean, kind of a rub screen or almost like a shuffle cut where Jakob is holding the ball and he dumps it to Pascal in the lane because everybody's spread on the perimeter. They've got good chemistry, but Jakob and Fred have good chemistry too. And Fred understands how to use screens properly, especially when you've got an experienced, a solid screen setter. So, you talked about shot creation. They run that. Now Cleveland has to adjust their game plan and how they're going to guard it. Fred pitches it to Jakob in the short roll. He's a great distributor. So getting Fred back just gives Nick Nurse more options.
Speaking of Nick Nurse, let's hear from him right now postgame.
Yep.
Didn't go that well.
No. We just. Certainly we have been doing a much better job of everything defensively, and we just were not a step slow tonight on everything. They had us back on our heels on everything, transition, guarding the ball, screen and roll, rolling. It was a big difference, I think, just in energy and intensity, and we just were kind of battling it we came out good both halves, short few minutes both halves, but couldn't sustain anything very much most of the night.
Was it a little bit
tough situations as well. Like they had the paint cracked pretty good, and
Yeah.
it was just you look at him. Pascal had a decent game, but there wasn't a ton of support behind him after that.
Well, I thought, yeah, yes is the answer to your question. I mean, we're gonna need to probably score it to get our defense set up, make some of those shots we have. I think, yeah, I think you're right. Pascal had a decent game. It just wasn't much else out there. I mean, some of the guys off the bench I thought were okay. Give us a few buckets here and there in the first half, etc. But just not enough offensive makes. I think we got to the rim a bunch. I think we had some great looks at threes and just didn't capitalize on enough of them like we have against these guys all year.
Okay, 20 games remain in the season, and we know every game counts, but extra scrutiny will be paid to every game here on out because, of course, now it's seeding, and that's what's all important for the Toronto Raptors group as they try to hopefully make a deep run into the playoffs. So let's take a look at the schedule, or the standings first off. First and foremost, how likely, can I just throw this at you guys, how likely do you think it is that the Raptors can get a 6th seed? Because fans are holding their breath right now.
Got to work for it. I mean, I think this week will go a long way to setting some of the fortunes. You have Chicago on Tuesday and then 2 with Washington.
The Knicks have to stop winning.
Well, Brooklyn's going to fall out, too.
Yes.
Brooklyn will back up a little bit, but, if you're Toronto, all you can do is look after your own schedule.
And this is it right here.
Yeah, and like I said, the next 3 games, if they win 3 in a row, they're above the waterline, right? They're above 500, and I think that's where you got to start.
The pressure's on those 3 games, right? Because you think about the Denver, LA, that's a West Coast trip that you can't really bank on, Sherm. So really the next 3 games kind of are where everyone's going to look in right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, record-wise, yeah, you got to look at it from that perspective. But even coming back off that road trip, it's not like Oklahoma City's a walk in the park. Minnesota's been playing good basketball, and then you have Milwaukee. So these 3 games, the next 3 games, are very important for the Raptors to capitalize on because it gets difficult again. And we talk about this all the time. Like, you can only control what you can control.
Yep.
You don't know who's going to be injured, what teams are going to get on a losing streak. You can't control that. So you've got to take care of business when you can. And they have an opportunity the next 3 games to do that. And I think when on the road, especially on the West Coast, it's difficult to predict anything. You're playing quality teams. There's travel. There's time difference. There's all kinds of elements involved. So do what you got to do the next 3 games.
The fans are holding out for 6. If they don't get to 6, try to get to 7 or 8 because the difference between 7, 8, 9, 10, if you're in the 9 or the 10 spot in the play-in, you need to win 2 games.
Yep.
If you're 10, those 2 games are on the road, too, in a playoff atmosphere in a one and done. So if you get to 7 or 8, 1 win, and all of a sudden you've got a spot.
In the best arena in the business. Home court advantage,
If you can get to 7, yeah.
Okay, so now, season's on the line every night from here on out, so that means this game against the Chicago Bulls is all important. So let's start with, of course, the guys kind of been the straw that stirs the drink. They were hoping Lonzo Ball would be healthy this year. They've shut him down. Zach LaVine in and out of the lineup, a little inconsistent, but he definitely plays at an all-star level when he's on the floor. But it's been DeMar DeRozan, the true all-star for this group. Sherm, what needs to be done to stop Double D from going off?
That's a great question. He's been able to go off on everybody. So
Can't.
Yeah, DeMar, he's got the cheat code. He's figured out how to pick the lock. This NBA is about at the rim and 3-point shots, and DeMar said, well, no one's practicing defending the mid-range, and he's just going to work in the mid-range. But he's difficult, he's strong, he's smart. He does a good job in terms of utilizing teammates. He's become such a better passer. He rebounds, he plays more defense. He's a difficult matchup, and if Zach LaVine's on the floor, you don't necessarily want to always overload on DeMar because you have a guy who can attack and make shots on the other wing. So, and Vucevic he's not chopped liver in the paint and from the 3-point line. So DeMar can really make things happen, and we know how good he is and how hard he works, and you always want DeMar to do well. But the Raptors are going to have their hands full defending him.
He's one of those guys, like I talked about with Donovan Mitchell. You're not going to see DeMar with like 6 points in a game.
No.
That's not happening. especially at this stage in his career. And I look at his career, the way it's progressed. DeMar was a huge Kobe guy, right? Went to the camps with Kobe. And I look at the way their career paths have paralleled and mirrored one another. Whereas, DeMar, like Kobe, came in young, full of vim and vigor, dunking, athleticism. And then how do we get to this point where he's transitioned now to a gravity guy? He's playing on the floor a lot, in the mid-range, shot fakes, footwork, outsmarting people. So it's a tall task if you're Toronto. It's a tall task. I don't think you can stop DeMar. I think you have to contain him, try to give him some kind of, different looks or, make it difficult for him and the other guys once he gives the ball up. But I'm thrilled to see what kind of a player DeMar has developed into. We always knew what kind of a person he was from the first day he came to Toronto, but what kind of a player he's developed into. And, he's on his third team now, and everybody's looking at his career and saying, hey, it could be a Hall of Fame career.
Easy guy to root for. DeMar is just an awesome human being.
One of the all-time greats off-court and hopefully on-court by the time it's all said and done. Now let's talk about Zach LaVine, a guy who's been riddled with injuries, of course. Things didn't work out in Minnesota, but you look at this guy and you say, what can't he do? He can score from 40, 30 feet out, and then he can get to the rim with the best of them. So how do you limit Zach LaVine, Jonesy, knowing that he's also paired with DeMar DeRozan? That's kind of been the challenge for Chicago, getting these two on the
I think it's the same way. I think your philosophy's got to be the same. When the guy's got the ball, you got to make it difficult for him. Make him work the whole time. And he's a guy that is explosive. His game is developed where he's got a lot of different tools. He can put it on the floor. He can shoot it from deep. Like I said, he's athletic. He's explosive. He's one of those guys where you just have to try and make him work, and sometimes just hope he has an off night.
All right, well, part of the responsibility for locking those guys down will fall on Scotty Barnes. We check in with Scotty Barnes post-game.
Scotty, what makes that backcourt of Garland and Mitchell so difficult to contain? Why are they, they obviously had a great night today, but it's not like they haven't done this to other teams.
Tonight they hit really tough shots. They're both really quick guards that can be able to get to the rim and be able to kick out and create shots, but they also know how to create their own shots.
With Garland specifically, what were you trying to do early on to try and make it difficult for him, and what was he able to do to kind of get loose?
He got a couple catch and shoots. Was getting to the rim. We just was messing up on the little things in our coverages that we just need to really clean up. So that's how those guys really got going early. Messed up some coverages, and they made the open shots.
Scotty, obviously you guys had success against Cleveland in the past. What was different about this game? Was it the back-to-back? Was it just the feel? What was it?
Wasn't really guarding. Like I said, they made a lot of tough shots tonight. Even when we did challenge, but we was missing layups, missing some good looks, missing wide open threes. But they just played a really good game. I feel like they just lost one. I feel like we knew that they was gonna come out trying to early, being able to make that presence off that loss that they had, and they played really good.
Raptors fans, all eyes locked in on potential playoff matchups. Fans are talking about who you want to play, right, with the seeding 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Who knows? Let's talk about potential situations where you're not going to get a home court advantage. You're going to have to play one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, one of those top dogs. We had a good conversation earlier about Philadelphia and how Philly looks this year, especially with the addition of Jakob Poeltl, like Sherm said when we were talking. How does this series change? So I'll throw it to you, Sherm. Do you is Philly as scary as they were last year?
I think they're more scary.
Yeah.
I do. I think, well, first of all, Joel Embiid is a different animal this year, and he's been great for the last few years, could have been MVP.
Arguably my MVP.
Yeah, he's different
mine
this
too.
year. And when you're playing that great brand of basketball, the difference has to be just a little bit, and then all of a sudden your greatness is even greater. And Joel Embiid is taking that step. I will say this. When the Raptors had Philly's number, they had Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka.
Yep.
And Marc Gasol, as Joel Embiid had quoted, living rent-free in Joel Embiid's head. And what we saw was his ability to disrupt everything Joel Embiid did. Jakob Poeltl's a different defender. He's light, he's airy, he moves well, but he's strong. And I don't know if Joel Embiid would look at Jakob the same way he'd look at Marc Gasol.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Jakob. He's a great player. And I think the players around Joel Embiid are different in terms of their confidence, the way that they've played and surrounded him with support. And I just think Philly's mentality is stronger this season than I've ever seen before. And they would be a different team to battle against, I feel.
Yeah, look, Embiid's he's got some battle scars. He's had some tough playoff losses and some stuff. After the Raptors series, he played the series with Miami with the mask on. Like those kinds of things. I mean, they prepare you. They give you that experience come playoff time. To Sherm's point, I think James Harden is drastically different in his role in Philadelphia, and everybody else is falling into place. Doc Rivers, a championship coach. A lot of people Philly started off slow this year. Everybody wanted to blow it up and fire Doc Rivers. Hold on a second now. They're third in the East. And this guy's genius card, once you win a championship and you've figured that out, it doesn't go away. So Philly's, they do it, to Sherm's point, they do feel different this year. I think they're a better team, and they've got some battle scars.
You mentioned the top three of the three top teams because you might end up playing one of those. Which team lends best or well to how the Raptors are currently executing? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but this is what the people want to know.
I mean, they're so tough at the top. We've already talked about Philly. Milwaukee has Giannis, who might be the best all-round player in the game.
And Drew Holiday,
Holiday
on defense.
Drew Holiday's been terrific.
All-time underrated.
Chris Middleton's starting to come, and all those ancillary, the
Bobby Portis.
Portis could be sixth man of the year. Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton.
Yeah.
The way these guys play and the way that team is put together, you talk about a tough out. They could be the best team in the East. And then look at what Joe Mazzulla's done in Boston. He's just
no longer the interim head coach.
Right. He just jumped in the driver's seat and continued to take the car where it is. Tatum has been terrific. He and Brown, the addition of Brogdon, all of the little things. So it's tough at the top of the East. There is not any easy out up there.
I agree. And as much as we just gave Philadelphia their flowers for being a better team, that's still, of the top three, is probably the team you want to face based on Boston's. I mean, they've been deadly all season long. And as long as Giannis is on the floor with Milwaukee and as Middleton gets healthier, I don't know if you want to see Milwaukee in a 7-game series. So I'd still go with Philadelphia at this point.
All right, let's talk NBA scoring as things have changed tremendously. Quickly before we go, I want to know, 2 players have dropped 70 points in the NBA this season. Are the players that much better than in the past, or is this the rules lending to the numbers?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the rules lend to the numbers, but man, guys are skilled. Like we are talking, we saw Donovan Mitchell yesterday. He was one of them. Damian Lillard. These guys are skilled players. Like Damian Lillard's stepping over center and taking a jump shot like it's a 12-footer, and it's going down. I mean, the skill level on these guys is terrific.
The freedom to shoot the three.
Yeah, and that's what the game is based on, launching threes. And you got some of the best shooters that this game has ever seen, in terms of a cluster of group of players. I mean, he had 41 in the first half, Lillard did.
Yeah.
That's a lifetime for some players.
13 threes. Some guys don't make that in a season.
And usually when guys go crazy in the first half, they really taper down in the second half. He had 30 in the second half. I mean, the scoring is unbelievable, but this is what the NBA wants.
Yeah.
They want the numbers to go up. They want these incredible offensive performances.
Here's the other thing, too. Kids are watching this.
I feel bad for coaches right now.
Well, you got 10 and 11-year-olds watching this, and the next generation, it's like, okay, so that's how it's done, right? I got to work on my three. I got to be able to knock it down, and it's just going to keep perpetuating.
But we also got to speak to the other side. Defense isn't as, I wouldn't say valued, but isn't preached as much as it was in the past. I mean, it's different now. You put guys into drive mode, and you hope to protect them at the rim. You angle, you open the gate, you send them to the defenders. There's no more of that.
Lockdown.
Keep that guy in front of you as best as you can. Nobody's going to stop anybody one-on-one in this league, but get down your stance and make him work. That's not necessarily how defense is being taught anymore.
Well, we expect to see. Well, Nick Nurse expects to see that, of course, Tuesday night, 7:30. The Chicago Bulls and the Toronto Raptors. All eyes on the Toronto Raptors as they fight for playoff seeding. TSN with the call. TSN Radio with the radio call. We thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you Wednesday.